What's the most out-of-touch thing you've heard a person say? During a breakroom discussion on how one of my coworkers was having to go on food stamps because the job didn't pay enough, the new CEO, who for the first and last time decided to have lunch in the breakroom, dropped this gem. Yeah, I know what you mean. We had to let our second nanny go. LOL reminds me of when I would talk about growing up in a shitty, poor and crime-ridden city. My ex would chime to talk how she had it worse. She would talk about the struggle of being poor both here in the US and in the Philippines. She would even cry talking about it too. But then sometimes she would let it slip out, how she had live-in servants in the Philippines and housemates here in the US. She attended private school her whole life. Some people are so out of touch that they think having servants, maids, is a normal occurrence. Remember my granddad telling me about getting a job when I was 15. He said you gotta be persistent. Keep going in every day, and ask for a chance. They'll admire your persistence and dedication, and you'll get it eventually. It felt backwards, but I tried it, and to this day and still barred from that pub BC I was harassing the manager. Mom called her 2 mixed great-grandkids, 2 ends in the woodpile, and she wonders why they and my sis don't visit her. When a guy on AITA was upset his wife was making him babysit their infant too much, so he and his mom told her there'd be no more going out. He said him going out all the time was different than her going out, and when asked for clarification he said because she's better at changing diapers and getting the baby to sleep. It truly blows my mind that there are morons out there who think taking care of their own children is babysitting. I had a guy at work complain to me that he couldn't go play golf that weekend because he had to babysit his kids. I said, you know, most people just call that being a father, right? So many people would kill to have extra time with their kids. Aren't you a bit too old to have a grandma? A neighbor when I told her my grandma just passed away. Wish I could have seen her face if you'd said, well, as of yesterday I guess I am. I actually said, well, I don't have one anymore, and she didn't really react. Naturally I'm still upset, it still hurts, and this woman still doesn't get it. I avoid her now. Yeah, about 2 days too old as it turns out. Had a friend in dental school who grew up in the rich suburbs north of Detroit. We were talking about traveling. She was going to Thailand for spring break, and she said I'd be surprised if most people hadn't traveled to at least 20 countries. I told her I'd be surprised if most people had ever left the US at all. For all those wondering, she is from Bloomfield Hills. To be rich enough to travel to at least 20 countries. I've barely been to 20 states. And most of those were just passing through on my way to somewhere else. The most unusual thing I heard from my friend is that he seriously thinks that menstruation doesn't exist. Wow, that would be one hell of a conspiracy, and to what end? Africa is a country. In front of an Ethiopian who insisted that Africa is a continent. This and those puzzled people who meet African immigrants and wonder if they are hungry, thirsty, or are surprised/impressed that they know what civilization is. It's interesting how many people think that all of sub-Saharan Africa is just collections of thatched huts filled with fly-covered, pot-bellied children and half-naked, floppy-breasted women. Maybe some guys with spears and bones in their noses standing off to the side. Show such people the skyline of Lagos or Nairobi, and they'll be trying to figure out which state or European country they're looking at. Recently got a new job that paid double what I used to make. When I resigned, my former boss told me money isn't everything, lol. I was only making minimum wage before. As a friend once said, money can't buy happiness, but I find that it makes misery so much more comfortable. I used to work for a minor aristocrat. Some advice he gave out, in absolute sincerity, over the years. 1. Don't take out a mortgage, whatever you do. Terrible things. You'll end up paying a lot more for your house, you know. 2. The thing about a Bentley is that you have to have a crap car too. I mean, there are times when a Bentley just isn't appropriate and what you need is a crap car. Crap car later turned out to be an expensive Alfa Romeo and a Bentley to be several Bentleys. 3. Recommending the Ritz in London as a place for regular after-work drinks. For, I don't know how anyone survives on their company's salary alone. His salary was more than £300,000, $500,000 a year. This is secondhand, but apparently one of the now retired partners in my consulting firm said something like, I could never go back to living on less than $1 million per year. I love the people that recommend buying a home using cash. The only average middle-class people that can do that are the ones that get $, when a richer relative dies. No one can save the hundreds of thousands necessary and save for retirement, pay for childcare, health insurance, and all the other things that drag the middle-class family down in the US. That allowing ice fishing shacks would then give rise to prostitution. I live in a place where ice fishing is impossible, and prostitution is legal. I don't understand how these two things could be linked. The mayor of Hudson, Ohio suggested that allowing people to build ice fishing shacks on Lake Erie would lead to prostitution. We don't understand how he got from ice fishing to prostitution either. This dude brought a hooker to an ice fishing shack before probably. Who is your chocolatier? Okay, I need to know the context for this one, if you'd care to share it. I was at an open house looking for a new property, and two women were discussing their favorite restaurants. One asked this question and I remembered that, some people just live such different lives. Wow. Imagine being able to drop that line unironically with a straight face. You're right, some people just live exceedingly different lives than the rest of us. They were indeed having a very normal conversation for them, because the other woman started listing the pros and cons of different chocolatiers. I felt like a member of the peasant class overhearing their conversation. Because you really were. I wish we could make work from home possible for our business, but unfortunately we cannot sit in a meeting over Zoom, poolside, while working from home. I had a manager very anti-work from home or being sick, or anything while I was there. Shortly after I left, her dad got sick, who lived across the country, and she was able to work remotely off and on for months to help out. I am glad she was able to do that, but there is no way she would have let anyone else. I despise her to this day. The president/dean, whatever of the university my wife used to work at, threatened to outsource their entire IT department, when during the height of the pandemic pre-vaccines one of them said, "Why do we still have to come to campus when we can do our work at home?" Super thankful she's not there anymore. Sort of tangential. Back in college, the entire class had a 10-minute argument with one student who didn't understand that not every country has citizenship by birth laws like the US does. The professor held off jumping in for about 5 minutes to watch us explain it to her, but couldn't take it anymore and figured the student would finally believe it when she said it. Nope, she started arguing with the professor too. The total out of touch part came when she finally conceded with, "Well, that's stupid. They should just do things the way we do them here." Wow, I was unaware of that. I also wouldn't argue with people telling me that though either. Very few countries equate birth with citizenship. Know this firsthand. Born and bred in the UK, but wasn't a proper citizen until I almost finished secondary school. Is also the cause of some controversy sometimes, because someone born and bred in the UK with no ties to anywhere else can commit a crime of any severity, serve their time, get rehabilitated, then get deported to a country they know nothing about. Had a millionaire tell me it was so great that even though we could all be making much more than we were at our non-profit, we stayed for the kids because who needs money when your job is rewarding? Plot twist, he was a board member who controlled our salaries. I was barely making enough to scrape by. WHOA, this blew up, lol. I know there is a lot of hate for nonprofits here, but I do want to clarify that for the most part one truly loved the people and kids I worked with, and the organization itself was a community staple that did a lot of good with the minimal funds we had. And we did have some awesome board members. But others were a bit out of touch, this being the worst example, haha. That sentiment is everywhere in nonprofits, sadly. Who needs money when your job is rewarding? It's pretty odd actually, because I've heard if you go to get a mortgage and they ask your income, tell them my job is rewarding. They'll instantly loan you a few million at 0% interest. Someone I know sadly always brags about her 500k flat, then tries to crowdfund for her cat's bills. I was 16 when I lost my dad. Our family is very, very close and I wasn't expecting, so I was hit pretty hard. A month after his death, I was picking up a book at a friend's house, but my friend wasn't home, so her mother was the one to give me the book. She asked how was my family, and I said we were trying to get back on our feet. Her exact words were, "Oh, don't worry, honey. Give it a year or two and you even forget your father ever existed." I was so shocked. She continued saying that first we forget their voices, and then their faces. I left her house feeling numb, sad and scared that I would forget my father. Suggested someone take the bus to save on gas prices. They responded, "Ew, do you know what kind of people take the bus?" "Yeah, working class people." "And also me?" OMG, my mom's friends were shocked that she let me take the bus to work. Which one? I'm a grown-ass adult and too. It's perfectly safe and fine to take it during the day, and loads of people do it. Just people outside the city have never taken public transit, and think it's full of burglars, who use the train to transport their stolen HD TVs back to their city shacks. I was working at a school for the kids of the 1%, and we were discussing what a millionaire was. One example I gave was owning property or assets worth $1 million or over, and the kid replied, "Oh, so everyone is a millionaire then?" Everyone equals all of the classmates. Maybe not the teacher. A relative of mine was a teacher at a high-end private school. When asked by her preschool kids what she'd do on her summer vacation, she said she'd catch up on some books, go see some movies, go to the park, etc. One of them asked, "You don't go to your summer home?" I grew up super poor, like going days without eating kinda poor, all because my mom legit thought welfare was only for unwed black mothers. She never called anybody to confirm that, never asked around. She wouldn't apply for reduced school lunches either, because that was ghetto. Imagine being so racist and buying into the welfare queen lie so hard that you let your own children starve. That was my mom. Didn't always have lunch money, asked about the reduced or free lunch. No, it would be an embarrassment for us to be on the reduced lunch program. Bitch, we are poor. Dad is disabled. You won't get a better job. It's more embarrassing for me to have nothing versus something. Mine said the same thing. That it would embarrass the family. Who the fuck thinks like that? I'm so sorry. My family was very poor, and we weren't on welfare for long stretches of time, because my mom would mess up the paperwork. But the difference between when we were not and when we were was vast. The struggle to have lunch food or scrape up change to buy lunch, versus just giving a code and sitting down with a meal, vast. You and your siblings deserved assistance. He told me as long as you're dating someone better looking than you, you're going to have to get used to me being hit on or having something on the side. You're going to have to date an ugly guy for that loyalty shit. Of all the insanity of this quote, the thing that gets me is the casual equating of something that cannot be controlled, me being hit on, with the opposite, me having someone on the side. It's like, look, as long as we live in an area with a lot of flowers, sometimes I'm going to get allergies or murder people. I mean, someone has to push up the daisies. Love it when toxic people tell you that you have to get used to, or deal with their toxicity. Not deal with, but have the privilege of the toxicity. Narcissists don't see it as toxic. You are graced with their presence and lucky to have them in your life. I think a lot of people take that attitude into a relationship. If I'm hotter than you, you're going to have to put up with my shit. I was telling my boss how proud I was my husband got a new job, he's legally blind, and she proceeds to tell me that she wishes she had a disability so she could just get handed a job. Had to walk away from that one. Anyone calling themselves an entrepreneur while pitching in MLM? Why are you still living at home at 23? Just buy a house, coming from someone whose parents bought her a house. Have a friend whose wealthy parents paid for his schooling, his rent, his startup, his car, and his down payment. He asked when we were finally going to buy a house, because renting is such a waste of money. My brother had half of his house paid for by his FIL. He kept telling that the houses I'm looking at were too small, and that I need bigger to grow into, and I finally had to snap at him that I'm a single income, and nobody is giving me a 50% down payment. Some people are just oblivious. My son is 26. Still lives at home. He'd have to work approximately 3.5 full-time jobs to afford a house in this absurd market. Hell, I couldn't afford the house I live in now in this market. My house is currently valued at over twice what my mortgage is for, but if I sold it, I couldn't afford to. Another. I'm 30 and living back at home for a year, finally going to be moving out with 4 friends so we can afford renting a house. One of us is an engineer and I work in IT, and we can't really afford places on our own. Why don't you live on disability, as a response to disabled people complaining about local government cutting back programs designed for making gainful employment accessible? I work with disabled adults. This is a bigger problem than most people realize. And people don't realize that many government programs demand that you stay permanently in abject poverty. Get a part-time job? Fuck you, no more healthcare, no more food, no more housing assistance, no more disability income. Accidentally save more than $2,000? Fuck you too. And without that little bit of help? Homeless and starving and totally fucked. And disabled. It is disgraceful. First, it is hard to even get on disability because they deny almost 100% of first-time claims. Then people who are disabled cannot work, must hire a lawyer and fight the system. If they win, they get to receive $1,100 per month, which is well below the poverty line. And on top of that, they cannot even get a job to supplement their income. $1,100 per month? Ha! I get $700 a month. I can't work, but I'd love to. If I happen to save any money over $2,000, I put it in a safe under my bed. I miss having personal interactions with people. Yeah, it's nice not having to worry about medical insurance, but there are times where I wonder why I can't work, even part-time, to get some money to live a happy life. Sucks. I get $800 a month and I live in a cheaply made camper. I have a cheap dented-up car that needs inspected. My whole check goes to expenses and utilities and repairs. I try having some quality of life like eating drive-through food a few times a month. I'm going to need new tires on my car, and that's going to wreck my finances. And even if I were to ever ask anybody for help, I'd lose all my assistance. BC Gov would say, well, whoever helped you once should just keep always helping you forever, as if I defraud the system for asking someone to send me funds to help with tires. Gov says handicapped people don't need cars. Well, I have like 5 DR apps a week. Plus always need to go to pharmacy. And nobody wants anything to do with me, BC, I'm depressed AF. I could never afford to have groceries delivered, plus my camper is down a shitty bumpy dirt road. I feel bad if anybody has to drive down here. If you are depressed, just go to Tulum and take a break, vibe high. Like, bitch, that is not how depression works, and yeah, I will just leave all my responsibilities just for randomly deciding going to vacations. When I told her that's not the way how depression works, she said, you are just too pessimistic. Every time I feel depressed I do this. I asked how she knew she was depressed, and she answered, well, the last time I had depression was because I cried because my dad didn't want to take me to Paris for a year. I wanted to die in that moment. Isn't that just a fancy word for feeling bummed out? Should mention this is a quote, not my actual thinking. Fixed the wording so it's verbatim. The company owes you nothing, you owe the company everything. My boss after I worked for 4 years in the company. I used to work for a guy who owned a temporary employment agency. I once watched him berate his two $7 an hour receptionists because his monthly income from the business had dropped from $40,000 to $25,000. And they had nothing whatsoever to do with how much money the business made. They were fucking receptionists. Temp agencies are the worst. They benefit the companies they work with and themselves. the employees get fucked by both. The CEO of the company I worked for scheduled a meeting with a few of the workers. I was invited and very curious. He started by asking everyone why they worked there. I was last and everyone said all this bullshit about loving the job. I just said, because you guys pay me to be here, that is literally the only reason. Are you that crazy you think I would take 50 hours a week from my family to come here because I like it? It's embarrassing when people don't realize how embarrassed they should be. Hope you find better. Thanks for the award, kind stranger. I would laugh in my boss' face if she said that to me. I don't mean that in a "I'm so edgy" way, I just wouldn't be able to contain it. I don't know why you would go to a community college when you can go to a university. Said by a high school guidance counselor giving a lecture on college admissions essays and applications in my senior AP English class after I asked naively if there's anything I had to do for community college. Turns out I had other classmates in the same boat who wanted to know too, but felt too embarrassed to ask. Anyways, I went to community college to get my prerequisites out of the way and got my associate's degree. Then transferred into university for a competitive nursing program. I saved money from those first 2 years in community college, didn't get a loan until I got into uni. Fuck that guidance counselor. Such bad advice. I went to a school in a wealthy area, and the guidance counselor would tell us to go to community college, get straight A's and an automatic acceptance into the local Ivy League school. If you can get the grades, it really is the best call financially. Thanks for watching this video. Hit the bell next to subscribe so you never miss a video. Like, comment and subscribe if you are new on the channel.